Welcome back to the course, Hackers and Cybersecurity Specialists. So, on your Ubuntu computer, you might be inclined to share SSH or other kind of services. For example, you can install OpenSSH Server. OpenSSH Server lets you remotely control your computer for system administration purposes. So you would install it with this command, and then you can log in from another computer and do some administration. So it takes just a second to install. We can check if it's running. See, with this command we check if it's running, and it's with this command it tells us that it's Open Secure Server is running, SSH is running. So it's now possible to remotely log into the computer if you know the username and password. So let's take a look now from the attacker's computer. So we are going outside of this main screen and we are on the attacker's computer. They might be interested in your specific computer. So you're running the SSH server, and that allows anyone on the same network to connect to it. Now let's say the attacker is on the same network. Might scan the network and find out that your computer is on the network, and then it could try connecting over SSH. So SSH with some username, let's say Ubuntu at the server. And now the only thing that's stopping him from having access to your computer is the password. So that might be fine because, okay, the hacker could try to guess the password, and obviously that would take a really long time, trying one by one to find the password. Might try a list of passwords, but even then, doing it by hand is really slow. So there is an automated way to do this. First we would need a password list. There is one included by default in Kali Linux. If you go to user, share, word lists, you'll see a file called rockutxtgz. We're going to copy that to the home directory and then extract it. So that will take a moment to load. Now if I refresh it, you'll see we have wait a minute. Looks like it went wrong. Let me try again. Here. Okay, let's see. We have a large text file with passwords. Now I could just output those. So if I type this command, it will just start printing all of those passwords. It's a list of commonly used passwords, and it goes very fast. I'm gonna break it with Ctrl+C, and you'll see those are commonly used passwords that people have used in the past. The list consists of 1 million passwords, or over 1 million. You'll see it's a really large list of commonly used passwords. Now, what we could do is try with SSH to connect to our computer, and then try every password in that list one by one, which would be very tedious, right? We would have to copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste. Would take a very long time. So we can use an automated tool for that called Hydra. So we type Hydra. Let me minimize this background window. We type Hydra. Then you'll see this is how you run the commands. So let's see, this was our target. This will be different on your computer, whatever your network IP of your computer is. Now we found that with ARP scan, in case that it was too fast, this command will scan your network for any other computers on the network. Okay, anyway, we use Hydra to do the automated attack. Now we don't know the username. We could simply guess that the user is using Ubuntu, or we might scan the computer for other open services. So we can make a scan with a program called nmap. If we do that, it says a report for Ubuntu. So it's obviously a Ubuntu computer. So we can run the Hydra command. We can run the Hydra command with the user Ubuntu. The password list with a capital P is the file we just extracted. And then // with the target address, which and now the target IP. So this command will try every password one by one in the SSH connection, so in the authentication process. So one by one it will try every password in that list. It can take a moment depending on how good is the password you picked. Maybe it's not in the password list at all, then it will be very slow. In this case, we didn't pick a good password, so it took like about a few seconds, and now we can log in. Because with Hydra, it just did a brute force attack, and it found the password. So we can now log in, type QWERTY, and now we are inside the Ubuntu box. You'll see here Ubuntu at Ubuntu instead of Kali. Ubuntu 22, so we have just hacked into this computer. Hello and welcome back. So, you might be running a Linux system and think you're safe. You don't update your system. Maybe you have had the Linux system running for years. For example, here we have a Ubuntu box. If I go to details, you'll see it's Ubuntu 14.04. So if you go to ubuntu.com, you'll see this is a really old Ubuntu version. You might think, okay, it's Linux, it's safe, who can hack into that, right? It's super secure, whatever. But actually, that's really an illusion. And so, let's say here on this box we have an SSH server running. So we can scan this box. So we can scan the target computer. Now, if you don't know the IP address, of course, you can do a network scan like this. Check who's on your computer network. You'll find the box on the network. Then we can scan that computer with the nmap commands. And that tells you that with nmap the SSH service is open. Then you can try to connect and just try one by one the passwords. So we could try with Hydra, and we could just guess the username like Ubuntu. Specify a password list that is included in Kali by default, as you saw in the previous videos, and then just do the tag. So if you press enter, you'll see it's trying and it will find the password of the user. So we'll be able to log in into SSH. But it's a regular user, right? It's a Ubuntu user, it's not root. So if we log into SSH with that password it just found, we are still a regular user. Now, depending on your connection, might take a moment to connect. Now, this is an old Ubuntu version. So if we go to details, we can see it, or if you just have a terminal, you can type uname -a. It will show you that it's an old Ubuntu version or an old system version. And every Linux system has their own versioning. But if you're on an old version, it's a really bad idea. You should update because software often has vulnerabilities. So, for example, the command to run things as root did have a vulnerability it was called CVE 2019 14287, if I believe I'm correct, or known as the Baron SAM edit. So it's a sudo vulnerability. So what sudo allows you to do normally is to run commands. So sudo ls, and then it would run the list command as administrator. But of course not directly, it would first ask you the password. So there was a vulnerability in that you can run commands immediately as root. So you would type sudo, and if you just type sudo, you'll see there are some parameters. So we would specify the command sudo -user, but then specify -1. Now there is no -1 user, so the program would basically crash because the username user ID start from 0 and up, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but not -1. So that would create a crash in the sudo program, and then we just make it start the bash prompt, so the shell interface. So if we do this, you'll see we immediately become root. We are now system administrator in the Linux system, and we have complete control over the system. If I type who am I, you'll see I'm root. So as a system of a Linux owner, you can prevent this by running those updates as fast as possible if you have a old Linux system, and just make sure you keep updating your system, because having vulnerabilities in your system because you're using outdated software makes the life of a hacker much easier. Like in this case, we just had to type one line to become administrator in the system. Now, of course, we first had to get initial SSH access, but then we could easily upgrade our access to become administrator or root into the victim's computer. So always update your system. You'll see this is a fileless attack, and now we are root, so we can also delete any log files or change them and remove any trace that we're in the system. So the only way now that the victim could find out that we're in his system is checking who's logged into the system or checking network connections. So here's somebody logging in from Kali. Probably a bad sign, right? From Kali, the system that's used for hacking. But in general, it is very easy to escalate now. So what we did here was called privilege escalation. We go from a regular user, Ubuntu, to root user, using a vulnerability in the Linux system. Now, of course, this vulnerability has been fixed in newer systems. But if you run an old version of Linux, it's not fixed, and it makes the life of a hacker very easy. Today, we're diving into the world of command injection. It's like hacking magic, but not the good kind. Imagine you're at a party and a friend hands you a seemingly innocent looking drink. You trust your friend, so you take a sip. Unbeknownst to you, your friend secretly added something extra to the drink that makes you feel not so great. In the cyber world, it's like running a command on your computer that appears harmless. You trust the source, but it's a website or some other source, and you run a command thinking it'll do something good. However, behind the scenes, the command includes a sneaky trick, fetching and executing a malicious script from the internet. This trick, known as command injection, is like that unexpected, unpleasant surprise in the drink. You didn't see it coming, and it can cause some serious problems. Always be careful what you consume in the digital world, whether it's a drink at a party or a command on your computer. So picture this. You found a website and it shows you an awesome game that you want to play. Seems pretty normal, seems legit. You have a screenshot of the game and they say all you need to do is to run this script on your computer. So you take that command and you paste it in your terminal, you press enter, and your computer is now hacked. You see, it ran the script directly from the internet without putting any file in the computer. And in this case, it's very obvious because it outputs hacked to the screen. In the real world, it might not be outputting anything to the screen, just giving the hacker complete control over your computer. Now, because there is no file stored in your computer, if we go to the file explorer, you'll see there's not any file here that has been created. You cannot scan it with an antivirus and then find some file because there is no file. This just run inside the computer memory. It's not findable in files. Now, it could be a game that you try to install, or it could be maybe a theme for your computer. Maybe you want to install some kind of visual theme. And then you decide to run that script from the internet. So just a single command can be enough to hack your computer. So it looks innocent, but it's not quite. So let's break it down. Here we are using the bash terminal, so the terminal, and we tell it to download the file. Curl downloads is a program that you can use to download files from the internet. And then it tells it to execute that file. So this link directly goes to a script that runs a command. So in this case, if we would take this URL here and we paste it inside the terminal, you'll see we just downloaded the script. Now, let's see where that script has been saved now. Probably in downloads, yes. So you'll see it run this script. But we download it ourselves now by pasting in the link. So, of course, if we paste the whole command in Firefox, nothing would happen if we would paste this. So this wouldn't work, it would just send us to Google. And so it's a very sneaky way that an attacker could try to get your computer to execute a malicious script. So it's using system tools, in this case the bash shell, to run a malicious script. So the takeaway here is always be cautious, check twice, thrice before running commands, or don't even run commands, the terminal commands that are shown on the internet. It might be that you just sneak a script in there using curl or some other tool and then force that to install on your computer without you noticing, because okay, if you run the script, it outputs or it runs the script, but there is not anything stored in your computer. The download file has nothing. It cannot be found by just browsing the computer. So it's a very sneaky way for a hacker to get into your computer. So always check twice or thrice from untrusted sources. You might only want to resort to installing your apps from the App Store, and don't run any commands from the internet. So if you get any website with a link, with a command, or maybe an email telling you to run a command, delete it, do not execute it. So there you have it, command injection demystified. Hi guys, and welcome back to the course. So on the left we have the hacker's computer, the Kali Linux system, and on the right we have the victim's computer, the Ubuntu system. They might run a single script in the terminal and give you access into their system. A single user mistake, so they copy and paste this. And you have access into their system. It doesn't leave any file. So if you check, okay, these files, let me just delete those and do it again. So if we connect, you'll see there is no single file created in the computer. There is no obvious evidence of the hack. However, the Ubuntu system itself does keep, or any Linux system does keep, a history file. So if we full screen this window, you can see that by default it doesn't seem there's any files here, but any Linux system has hidden files. So if you go to ls-al, you'll see there's hidden files which start with a dot. Now, in general, they're not so interesting, these files, but you'll see there's a file called bash history. Now, we don't want any evidence that we are in this computer. So this bash history, it records any command that we type into the computer. So we can output that with the cat command. It will be different depending on your setup, on what commands you run before. But you'll see it's a record of all those commands that have been run before on the computer. So what you could do is just delete that history file and then recreate it. So then now the bash history file doesn't have any evidence. We output the bash history file. There is no evidence of the hack now. That file is empty. And if you check in this file system itself, the downloads directory is empty. There's just nothing here that shows that the computer has been hacked. Welcome to today's quick video. So we're going to get into something else. Sometimes you might download installation files from the computer. So that is not specifically malicious in itself most of the time, but it might add something malicious to the script. For example, we have a installation script here. You might download some installation scripts from the internet. Now, when you download those scripts, usually you make them executable. So with this command, we make the script executable, and then it's an installation script, so you might be inclined to run it as root. Now, it's very dangerous to run such scripts as root. Now, why? Because there might be an additional reverse shell into it. So if I press enter here, you'll see it gives a reverse shell into the attacker's box. And if I type who am I, it will show you the current user, which is root. We are administrator into the box, so we have full control over the victim's computer. So this is not a completely fileless attack, because there is a file, setup.sh, but in this case it's added to that file. So the file itself may not be suspicious, because okay, maybe it's installing this or that program and the dependencies and all of that, but because there is an additional line that starts the reverse shell, it gives us reverse shell. So now we can do anything on the system we are root in the victim's computer. So let's break that action here. And if I output that script, you'll see first it is just a regular bash script. It is just installing Firefox. But then there's an additional line here that starts a reverse shell. Now, with the website before, you saw that you can write a reverse shell in many different ways. So it can be really sneaky inside an installation script of anything. And it could be simply setup.sh, but it could also be, if you're compiling from source, it's in the configure file, the make file, or hidden somewhere. So while not completely a fileless attack, it is an attack where you don't download something malicious per se, but the malicious thing is attached to the package or the software you want to install or compile. So it's like a hidden attachment that can have the reverse shell. Now, because we run this setup as root using the sudo command, it gave us root into the victim's computer. So it is like very dangerous to run scripts from the internet as root, especially because it can start a reverse shell, but then it gives a reverse shell as administrator. So it completely hacks the computer. And so, yeah, if you decide to download any script from the internet, you should always check the source code. it can be really sneaky. And of course, if there's a really long file or a configure file with lots of commands, it might be really hard to find out that there is a reverse shell command inside it. So in general, I recommend just using the package manager or using some official source, and don't do any scripting from the internet, or just write your own scripts, but don't run other people's scripts, because it might contain malicious code. And even it could be that the project itself is legit. For example, in GitHub, you can kind of software projects. People could clone the project, so they could make a copy of the project and then add the malicious into it. So then you think, okay, I'm just installing a Firefox browser or whatever legit software. But because the website is cloned, or the Git repository, they add that line, and suddenly it is not like the original anymore, and it contains the malicious addition. Welcome back to the course. So the hacker has access into the computer and has deleted the bash history file. Is there any way that the victim could know that his computer has been hacked? Well, let's be honest, if they are not an expert Linux user or like a more advanced Linux user, probably not. They run this command without thinking too much about it, and that's it. However, if they might suspect that they've been hacked or get another user, perhaps they might be trying to find some traces of their hack. So they might start to check system logs. For example, they start to look in the file var log, this log, for any unusual events, or maybe in the out log. And you'll see nothing suspicious is there, right? And like just some Ubuntu stuff, but nothing weird. They might just check the process list, but that's more if they're a more professional user. So in the process list, they would have to search through that list, and then they can find that command that, okay, here is that command that is rather suspicious, connecting to this IP address, giving a reverse shell. But they would only do that kind of checking if they are more advanced user. Then they might check the process list or checking the active network connections. Now, besides those things, they might check the etc password directory. So it's where all of the users are stored. So in the file etc password, they might check, is there any new users? If they do that, of course, they don't find anything, even though we're inside their computer. We're using their username. So that's why they're not really any new user. But of course, another hacker might want to maintain access into the system. So they might add users into the system for easy access. They might search for usual files, or for example, processes that start quickly. So that is done using the cron tab file. So in this case, cron tab is just a file, and then you can schedule processes. So they might check, is there anything suspicious in that file? And basically a big investigation, but it's only if they might suspect that they've been hacked. So it's most likely is not the kind of user that copies and pastes this command into their terminal. They probably won't do some kind of cyber investigation, like, is there any trace of hacking activity in the computer? So while there is very few traces, now there's no history file, there's no files in the computer, there is still some traces in that if the user were to check at the processes running, so of course it's a program running, they might see the command in there. So if they would run ps space EUX, so there is a possibility that they find it, or if they check the network traffic. So if they would use netstat, which in this case is not even installed by default, but if they were to check the network traffic, they might see that there is a network connection to the IP address. But if they would simply check based on regular files, it's invisible, right? And even if they check their bash history file, deleted it and replaced it. So just based on the file system, it cannot be found. You would really have to look at the processes or the network traffic in order to detect this reverse shell, to detect this hack. Many users, especially in corporate environments, will use email. Email is really everywhere. It's not anymore that kind of thing for nerds. It's really everybody's using it. And so if you want to get initial access into a computer, a simple way could be to simply email the user or the company the people in the company. So that's what hackers will often do. Send emails with just attachments. So with an attachment, and then if you click on that attachment, they would get access into your computer. And so this works on any system. This works on Mac, on Windows, on Linux, on you name it. They often find those emails just by browsing the internet. For example, they would go to hunter.io, and then they would search for a certain person or just the company itself. So for example, maybe they search for google.com, and then they click find email by company, and then for example, they could search for google.com, and then they in this site they would immediately get email addresses of people in that company. So email is one possible way that hackers get access into computers of companies. So they would then have, if they have a paid account here, they would see the email addresses of those people in the company, and then they could craft a malicious email to all of those users, and they only need one of those people to run the malicious script. So you'll see here for this company there is more than 18,000 email addresses. So of course not everybody is gonna be like, no, this seems suspicious, but you just need one, or maybe basically you just need one person that runs the bad script, runs the bad program, and you have access into the company, right? It's like you don't need to convince 18,000 people to start your bad program. You just need to convince one, and then you have access into a user in that company, into a computer in that company. And so let's do a demonstration of that. Hello, hackers and cybersecurity specialists. So one of the ways a hacker could have initial access to a computer is simply by sending them an email. So here we have an email that we crafted, that the user received. They open it in their email client, could be Thunderbird or whatever they're using on Linux, and then they see might have some phishing mail. So it's a deceptive text saying, okay, activate this for VPN. You'll see it's legitimate, quote unquote, from boss at work, and please run this commands immediately. So they might just do that. So they might start a terminal and type in those commands. So they will go chmod+x VPN. Wrong directory. And then just run it, instantly giving access to the victim computer. So now we're in the hacker's computer. We have just entered the victim's computer. Let's see if I check, we're inside the Ubuntu box. So that's one way. They could attach a program, which could be a bash script, or it could be a script or a program that is just a one-click, where if they do a one-click, the same effect. So email is one of the ways into a system, and also very targeted, right? So they would just send an email to the computer they want to enter with the malicious attachment, and then when they click on it or when they run it, immediately can have access into the computer, especially if there's no firewall or any other kind of security defense mechanism. And even if there is a firewall, then would most likely bypass it, because it's a reverse shell. It's connecting to the outside world. It's not blocking any incoming connection. There's no incoming connection open on this box. It's just connecting to this server, to the hacker's computer. And so on the hacker's computer now we have complete control over the computer on a user level. So if I check who am I, it will tell that we are Ubuntu or whatever the username. We are not administrator in the system unless they have administrator rights. But it could be simple emails that allow you to hack into a Linux box depending on the technology skills of the users. So in this case, I would have very few technology skills. They would just say, oh yes, this seems legit, I should run this for work, and then you have access into their computer.